the Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Breaking History. We got a lot to go through. How you doing, Gordon?
Dude, I'm great. I'm great, Matt. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm all right. I know we're just talking a little bit before the show about some of the points to touch on. You know, there's hotspots ablaze around the world. There's the Victory Day celebration coming up May 9th in Moscow. World leaders, dozens and dozens of world leaders are going to be present in Moscow, meeting up with Putin. I think Xi Jinping just met there to celebrate the defeat of Nazism back in 1945. And at the same time, you got Zelensky doing his thing, threatening to launch terrorist attacks onto Moscow, potentially killing world leaders if he actually is stupid enough to go through with that, indicating that somebody's got a problem with the idea of reviving memories of defeating fascism, and I wonder why. We got the Middle East, interesting ceasefire potentials that are weak but still hopeful on the Yemeni front. Dialogues with Iran, U.S.-Iran dialogues have not been sabotaged, although many have tried to sabotage them. And then we have what looks like something that could spill over into another major war with nuclear powers, India and Pakistan. So we got these things, maybe more things to talk about. I don't know what's topping your front and center in your mind these days.
There's a lot of things. I mean, I was on the show last night with John and a few others, and we were kind of running through the Mark Carney Trump meeting yesterday. So we kind of hit on the Houthi thing. Trump announcing that the Houthis were they were done. The Houthis had capitulated, and so they weren't going to attack us anymore. We weren't going to attack them. Somebody later asked in the press conference, what does that mean for Israel? Like, what if the Houthis in Israel keep fighting? And Trump said, yeah, that's outside of this. Like, we're cool with the Houthis. If they want to keep fighting Israel, that's something separate, which is an interesting response. The reports out of Jerusalem are that in Tel Aviv are that Netanyahu was blindsided by all this. Like the Israelis were blindsided by all that. Like they had no idea Trump was going to do all that, which is interesting because then Trump teased. He said we have a major. They're leaving for the Middle East on Monday night, as he explained. They're going to be in the Middle East all next week, and he said we have a major announcement. When he was talking about the Houthis in Iran, he was like, we have a major announcement we're going to make. It's like earth shattering that we'll make either Thursday, Friday, or maybe Monday before we leave. And my speculation is that it's going to be Iran joining the Abraham Accords. And then I think when they go, it would make sense for them to announce that. And then for when Trump arrives in Doha, for the Iranians to come to Doha, which is the third leg of the trip, and do that, like hold that signing meeting. Maybe the UAE, but it makes more sense for it to be Qatar. So it's like narratively and all the patterns I've seen, it would make more sense for it to be Qatar. And that would be a big rug pull for Netanyahu and the neocons because they are expecting a war with Iran. That's the big talking point. Even if it never happens, the threat of the war gives them something to talk about. It gives them their political juice, for them to, rally support, fundraise, whatever it is they have to do. And Iran being like this specter, this phantom, menace that's lingering on the in the tree line. And for Trump just going there, be like, nope, we're actually going to make peace with Iran. They're going to join the Abraham Accords, which means they're in a total alliance now with the Arabian Peninsula. And, you can't attack them now because that means you're going to go to war with Qatar, UAE, Egypt, and all them. So
that would be incredible. That would be an incredible flank. I would love to see that. So I'm guessing you think that the whole discussion around renaming the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Gulf, is just a bit of a smoke screen to just keep people off kilter a little bit.
I think it's a total smoke screen. I don't think Trump. It seems it kind of goes along with like the Gulf of America thing. The Gulf of America makes more sense in terms of like actually doing it because it's our coastline. And then I went and I actually like measured the coastline, and we have way more coastline than Mexico does in the Gulf. So like you can rationalize that. It really makes no sense for the American president to be like, well, we're going to rename the Persian Gulf, which is on the other side of the world. Like we're renaming that. I mean, maybe leave that discussion up to Saudi Arabia and and Iran.
Yeah. It seems to have that character of silliness, completely out of place at this moment, and it does do what has been the case or a trend as far as the Trump technique is concerned over the past many years, which is to cause people to just talk and freak out about certain things that are said as words while real policies are being agreed upon behind the scenes, which would normally be sabotaged if people weren't distracted with some inflammatory thing or another thing. So I do find that interesting, this prospect that you're saying, because that would bring a major power, part of the BRICS, a Shia nation, into the Abraham Accords, which so far had the fatal flaw of typically sicking or favoring Sunni Arab and Muslim nations over those of the Shia sect. So this would be cool. Also would provide a new support for imposing a real Palestinian state as well, to get some, because I mean, Israel right now has really been running amok, thinking that they have full support of the U.S. military-industrial complex, and that would definitely shift gears there quite a bit, while at the same time relieving some of those who are freaking out that Iran wants to destroy them by saying, hey, look, Iran's also playing into the Abraham Accords. Maybe they're not actually your enemy. And that would also change the gears around the idea that, Iran is this Nazi, this new Arab or like Persian Nazi state that wants to just kill Jews and destroy Jews. And it's like, well, wait a minute, aren't there like 10,000 Jews living happily in Iran that have been there in an unbroken continuity since like the Old Testament books were written? There's some beautiful synagogues in Iran too. They've got a member of parliament who's Jewish.
My understanding is they have the largest Jewish population outside of Israel in the Middle East. That's my understanding. I might have that wrong, but
no, I read the exact same thing. Yeah,
and which is interesting. And what makes the chaos that Trump likes to sow work, in my opinion, is that the key decision makers on the other side are already read in, and he's already like locked in with them on what the outcome's going to be. So meaning that the people in Iran who would be the actual decision makers on going to war with the United States or escalating things or whatever are already like talking to him, and he's already kind of made some sort of a deal with them. And so he can make this kind of chaotic deployment about the Persian Gulf and see who freaks out. And then like that kind of, it's like sending the dog into the brush when you're hunting quail or whatever. And then they scare all the birds out and like, all right, let's see what birds pop up. And then you just blast them. So that's kind of how I see him sowing these narratives, the chaos narrative. I'll play this quick video and then we can do the ad read and kind of reset. But this is not a crazy idea. This is an interview from October 7th. So like 7 months ago. And here's what Trump said to Hugh Hewitt.
Can you get the Abraham Accords going again and get your partners like UAE, Bahrain, and possibly Saudi to help you, and Egypt to help you in Gaza if you're president again, to rebuild it the right way and get rid of the fanatics?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I think not only the Abraham Accords, the Abraham Accords is one of the great things that ever happened in the Middle East. That should be loaded up with everybody right now. And, I made the statement the other day, people said, oh, I would have gotten, in my opinion, 50-50 chance, maybe more than that. Iran would have been in the Abraham Accords. They wanted to make a deal so bad until we had that phony election. They wanted to make a deal so bad that it was, and Biden missed the opportunity. Now, then he pours money down their throat, gives them billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, takes the sanctions off. They wanted to make a deal so badly. I would have had everybody, and I believe I would have had Iran. You would have had real peace.
Yes. So not crazy. And I did check. There were other moments around that time where he was saying the same thing, where he was like, yeah, had I stayed in office in 2020 through 2021, Iran was 100% going to sign on for the Abraham Accords, and we were going to have like actual peace in the Middle East. So,
that's interesting that you pulled that out. What would that look like to you? Like, if, let's say, it happened, it's announced next week, okay, Iran has signed on, what would be the outcome? What effects would flow out of that?
Well, everyone, that's a good question. Everyone remembers, let's see. Everyone remembers when Netanyahu went last September to the UN and gave a speech, and he held up these maps.
Yes.
And he says, the one on the right is the blessing, which is Sudan, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, UAE. And then the curse, which is Syria, Iraq, Iran. Mm-hmm. And then down here, it has like the Houthis in the western part of Yemen. And so he's, I think it's also has Palestine probably highlighted in there. But, he's, and Lebanon as well. So this was, I think, the plan. The plan was to get the green, the blessing. India is also highlighted in there as well. So India and Israel are allies. Get the Sunni Muslims, which would include India, to go to war with Shia Islam, which is Persia, Syria, Lebanon, half of Iraq, So it seems like that was the plan. I think that's how Trump, I would imagine, if I were like just speculating, that's how Trump got the establishment GOP to sign on to the idea of the Abraham Accords. Is he probably told them, hey, you want to go to war with Iran? You got to get all the Arabs on board. You got to get the Sunni Arabs on board. If you want a war with Iran, you got to get the Middle East behind you. And they're probably like, oh, it's such a good idea. Like, yes, let's get the Arabs to fight the Persians. Like, that's World War III right there. If we can get Israel on the side of the Arabs. So this is like the rug pull, because I think the Abraham Accords were designed for this exact reason that Netanyahu is demonstrating right here. It was to get the green to go to war with the black. And now it's getting rug pulled because you're getting the black to join the Abraham Accords. Because I think if Iran joins the Abraham Accords, the next logical move, Trump had a phone call with Erdogan the other day, the president of Turkey. Mm-hmm. Erdogan, and Trump has said in 2019 he loves Erdogan. He's like, I love Erdogan. Erdogan, I've always said, is an enigma, very hard guy to figure out. Turkey's a very much like as a nation an enigma, because they're both like in NATO, kind of in the EU. And have been like an Operation Gladio headquarters, according to Colonel Tanner Watkins. So it seems to me that Turkey's a really hard nut to crack. Trump says he loves Erdogan. Erdogan invited Trump like 2 days ago to come to Ankara and visit him. It would be that this would tee it up. If Iran joins the Abraham Accords, it really tees up Trump going to Turkey, meeting with Erdogan, like officially blessing Erdogan in Turkey as like the protector of Syria, because he has long pushed the idea that Turkey's the one that toppled Assad, not Netanyahu. Netanyahu is, there's this tug of war happening in Syria where Netanyahu and the Zionists want a land bridge from Syria to northern Iraq, and I think the purpose is they want to use that as a staging ground to invade Iran when they go to war with Iran. Yeah. And so, like, to get into Kurdistan, they want a land bridge to the Euphrates River, which would be Kurdistan. And then once they have access to Kurdistan, the Kurds are a longtime Israeli ally. The Kurds would help them go to war with, like, move troops to Iran and invade Iran. So it seems to me that if you get Iran on board, then you get Erdogan on board, you can then take back Syria and make sure that Syria doesn't become a Salafi hellhole, which is what it's fallen into under Jelani. So,
right. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good thumbnail sketch. I was just noticing too, as well, just to recap a little bit, back in 2023. This is from the Atlantic, the official think tank of NATO. So the Atlantic is the official sort of mouthpiece for NATO, as far as the propaganda outlet. In 2024, they put out a sort of summary of how China organized the Iran-Saudi deal to rebuild bridges between Iran and Saudi Arabia that had formerly been destroyed for many years. Saudi Arabia had executed a beloved Iranian leader and many others that were beheaded in some mass execution. And there's a tit for tat thing. They shut down all embassies. So it was looking really, really bad. And then 2023, they announced they're going to reopen their embassies, and they started discussions even around, in this article, it goes through military cooperation. There was a discussion in October of 2024 to have a military exercise carried out between the Saudi and Iranian militaries. And I've got like a little quote here from one of their press releases from the two sides, the diplomatic teams from both sides, saying Saudi Arabia and Iran can cooperate in Palestine for establishing a Palestinian state. This is something that they can work on together, was the press release coming out of one of the 2024 negotiations between the Iranians and the Saudis. So the fact that Trump is potentially facilitating this is very, very promising. And that little excerpt you had from his October 2024 remarks, I find that extremely interesting. What do you got there as a
so that date that it was just included in that article you just shared was March 10th, 2023. This is March 22nd, 2023. So this is a year later. Or, I'm sorry. This is March 22nd, 2021. Saudi Arabia proposes a peace deal, but Houthis say it's not enough. So a year before that, Saudi Arabia was trying to make peace with the Houthis. Didn't quite materialize, but then let's see, it was then you have jump a year later. So then a month after that Chinese brokered peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia happens, here's April 2023. The Houthis come to this looks like it's I think it's the Saudis went to Yemen. So they went to Sana'a and they met with them there, and they basically made peace. It was like May of 2023, because it was about 5 months before the October 7th attack. They made peace with the Houthis. So that's why when the Houthis started like attacking Israel and the ships, Saudi Arabia was like, look, we don't want to get involved. We just made peace with these guys. We were in an 8-year war with them. It's like, we just made peace with these guys. And again, I think a lot of this stuff was done in order to reinvigorate those fissure lines, those political fissures between all like these old tribes, right? The Shia, the Sunni, a lot of that stuff is, as the Pakistani defense minister said last week, a lot of that stuff, was manufactured to a certain extent, like jihad, manufactured by the West, the Salafi Islam, all those schools were funded, created by the West, staffed by the West. But some of that stuff is organic. Some of that stuff, does have actual ties in reality to ancient, tribal feuds and that sort of thing. And of course, like the Shia Sunni break after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. It seems to me, like, to your point, Iran and Saudi Arabia trying to come together with Israel to solve the Palestine question, the Palestine problem. That was like, I think, the earnest effort to do it. And then it's very clear now that's not going to happen. Like, that Israel and Saudi Arabia are not going to be able to do that together. So the next place you'd go to is you go to Iran, which is the official narrative is that they're the ones backing Hamas. They're certainly the ones backing Hezbollah. Hezbollah backs Hamas. The Houthis back Hamas, and Palestine. The whole idea of a Palestinian state. And so if you get Iran on board, then you're definitely going to have Hezbollah and the Houthis on board, and probably Hamas, especially if you have Qatar in the mix as well. So, it's like you're bringing all of the Muslims together, getting them on the same sheet of music, and then you can force Israel into making peace. But again, I kind of think both Israel and Ukraine are going to just cling to conflict to the bitter end, and it's going to require a really, really strong, heavy hand from Trump and Putin together in order to bring both of those situations to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note here, before we shift gears, I guess a little bit, let's do a word from today's sponsor, Goldco, and then we'll look at some other world dynamics. So Goldco, here we go. The last 4 years have put so much stress on American family finances. Help end the stress now and celebrate the golden age with President Trump by diversifying with gold and silver. Remember President Trump's first term? Gold increased by 55%. Don't wait. Diversify your hard-earned assets and buy your gold from Goldco now with no purchase minimums. Goldco has been established as a top-rated precious metals company and a leader in the gold industry, providing white glove treatment for over 10 years. Their buyback guarantee assures you that if your situation changes, they will repurchase your metals at the best price, providing you with peace of mind. You may even qualify for up to 10% back in bonus silver. Visit badlandsgold.com to claim your free information and instantsilver.com/badlands to see how much free silver you can get. Find out the relationship between gold, silver, Trump, and you with the free report focused on Trump and your financial future. That's badlandsgold.com and instantsilver.com/badlands to take control of your financial destiny. All right.
Yeah. So before we keep going, I just wanted to say, Gart, had a great time at Gart. It was awesome meeting you. I know we've spoken since then, but just publicly, it was great finally meeting you. I think everyone thought that you were like the star of the weekend because for a lot of people, including other Badlands hosts who don't get a chance to watch this show, that was their first like introduction to you, for at least some of them, and they were like blown away by your like recall ability and just your vast knowledge. So it was all.
That's cool. Yeah, there was a lot of love. I really appreciate it. And I forgot that's true. The Breaking History viewers might not have seen our interaction on your Book of Trump show on Monday. So yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was Gordon and I. That was our first chance to actually interact directly outside of this medium of the screen. And that was just really good soul food, the whole thing. I had a lot of fun. So yeah, I highly appreciate these things that you guys are able to pull off and how you're able to get so many moving parts to come together. I've organized many events over the years, but these are very intricate, multi-day projects, and hats off to Burning Bright's wife.
Yeah, Mrs. Bright is the one who really makes that happen.
I discovered she's the maestro guy.
She's the maestro. Without her, it would look very different, probably. So
yeah, no, that was good, man. That was very, very good. Yeah. So we have on this note, you brought up Ukraine as well. The problem here is, I guess, you're not dealing necessarily with rational actors. Like there is this idea in game theory that everybody is looking out for themselves, their best interest. And it's kind of an amoral, I would even say immoral way of trying to evaluate human systems. But, there's a certain practical application of it. And certainly world dynamics are shaped around game theory models. So the flaw with that, though, I suppose, is that it assumes that every individual actor is actually animated by their self-interest. It's some idea. Even if their idea of their self-interest is wrong, that's still an assumption. Now, when you introduce ideology, you can into the mix, you get degrees and layers of crazy to the point that you can get people to ideologically, for whatever psycho-spiritual myths that they've been enmeshed by and shaped by, you could get them to become a murder-suicide cult. You could turn literally a whole people into a murder-suicide cult, which would do things that might annihilate their own and their children's better interests in order to actualize some promise of what they believe to be their divine right to rule, or to have whatever some promise made thousands of years ago manifest in our current world, whether it's the reconstruction of Solomon's temple that will sort of usher in a new age and bring in the the Messiah, even if it means doing a maneuver that might involve mass extermination of their own people, mass suicide to induce that cataclysm. And then we see the same thing with the Ukrainian hard Ukrainian nationalists. And I don't like calling them nationalists. I know you don't either, because they're really not that at all. They're selling off their country to BlackRock. They're sacrificing their people, their culture on some altar based on their perverse idea of what a nation is.
They're zealots. Yeah, I think they're zealots who are willing to kill their own people in order to achieve political power effectively. It's like it's secular political power. It's not necessarily because they think it's going to get them access to heaven or something like that. Like these ideas that get associated with jihad. It's really more of all about political power, which is also, I think, what's animating Netanyahu and the people in Tel Aviv, around him in Tel Aviv, where some of them might be actual religious zealots. I think they probably are to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, they're fighting for like secular political power. And maybe that political power is meant to build the new temple and usher in, summon the Messiah and all that stuff. So they may have an ultimate like spiritual component to it at the end of the day. Yeah. But in the immediate future, what they're fighting for is secular political power in order to maybe do other things. But
well, you're the first one that ever showed me that video of Bibi Netanyahu getting chastised by, I don't know if it was Rabbi Schneerson or whether it was a different.
It was the famous Chabad guy. What's his name? Is it Schneerson?
I think it's Schneerson. It was him, eh? Okay, he's like
the Rebbe, the guy who they call the
Rebbe. Yeah, the big
Rebbe.
Yeah. The avatar of some, I don't know,
weird. And that apparently was like in 1991. That was like that was 34 years ago, and he was like, "You're running out of time. You're running out of time."
And he's like scolding Netanyahu, who's got, he's like a school child getting scolded because he's not moving fast enough to invoke the Messiah. And it was a bit jarring, but it added a lot of sort of meat to the bones of how I was thinking about these creatures. But you have definitely problematic ideologies. I don't think anybody really knows exactly how these things can be resolved. It's more just, I think, not tackling it directly, because there's no direct solution to the Israel-Palestine problem. There's no direct solution to the Ukrainian problem, which is why I think a lot of people get frustrated with Russia, who understands this, which they're of the view, well, why is Russia dragging on this conflict that began in 2022? Why are they dragging it on? Because Russia knows you can't go directly in and treat Ukraine like it's Fallujah. Not that we should have done that to Afghanistan either. That was wrong. But you can't just go with a scorched earth, shock and awe thing. And you're dealing with ideologues who want martyrs. Part of it is that they have this idea that the more they can create sacred sacrifices, the more the next generation will have a chip on their shoulder to fight even more like Viking overlords seeking revenge or something. And that's a very dangerous ideological problem to deal with. So obviously dealing with the international chemistry around Ukraine is important. Changing how nations, if we stop pouring fuel on the fire, giving weapons to Ukraine, it could end pretty quickly, because Ukraine is they're not a sovereign country. In that sense, you could say neither is Israel, which requires massive billions of dollars of input of U.S. taxpayer money, international support financially, weapons supplies, just to exist. And even that, they're not doing very well, because their idea of existing is accelerating their own annihilation. Same thing for Ukraine. So if you just turn off the taps, frankly, it would change the chemistry quite a bit. You can get conversations going that you couldn't get right now. You have Victory Day coming up. It's kind of embarrassing for some who've been paying attention that not only is Israel acting a lot like the Nazis were to their Untermenschen neighbors. In this case, it's the Arabs living in Gaza. Ukraine also, you see C-14 Azov battalion members. There's the Pravi sector, right sector, otherwise known as, who are openly have been emblazoning Nazi SS regalia and symbolism, using the language of Bandera, Hitler's Ukrainian Nazi collaborator, fascist collaborator in World War II, as a new hero of Russia. So, hero of Ukraine, sorry. Renaming street names in Ukraine around Nazi SS, so-called national heroes who died fighting Russia. So you have this weird revival of Nazism in a very literal way. Like, you could say there's more covert Nazism, revived in Eastern Europe around the European Union. And you could say that, some of the Wall Street bankers funding Hitler were never dealt with. So a lot of that is sort of still covert Nazism. But here we have literal Nazism, swastika-wearing Nazism. And it's Victory Day coming up on May 9th. So there's a lot of very interesting historical ironies. I just read that in Lithuania, Estonia, I forget, there's another country that they're blocking. What was it? Slovakia. Was it Vucic? Yeah, Vucic's.
Vucic wants
right?
to go. I think is he sick? There's something going on with Vucic where I don't think he's going to go now, but he was planning on going, and they were threatening him if he went. And now I think as of like last week, he said he wasn't going for not because he doesn't want to go, but I want to say it was for medical reasons. But that could be just an excuse. But Fitzo's going. Fitzo was like, yeah, I'm definitely going. And they're like, well, if you go, we're probably gonna have to shoot you in the chest again. And he's like, well, come get me.
Wow.
And Viktor Orban's obviously going to be there. Some other notable names. You mentioned Xi. So I think Xi's already arrived in Moscow, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Yeah, so Xi's there. There was like question whether or not Xi was going to go. Like they're like, he might just send a deputy. He might just send what's his name? Wang Yi. Is Wang Yi the foreign minister? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But no, he's going. Makes all the sense in the world. Kim Jong-un's going to be there. Ibrahim Traore from Burkina Faso is going to be there, which is a big deal because he never leaves Burkina Faso. He got invited to Trump's inauguration, didn't go to that. So yeah, I think it's going to be a big celebration. You mentioned that Zelensky's threatened to attack it, which is just such like a Bond villain thing to do. We're gonna have a peace. We're gonna have a peace parade where all these world leaders are gonna gather, and they happen to be all the world leaders that the Uniparty hates. And yeah, we're gonna attack it now. I mean, it's like I almost want them to do it, like and nobody to die, because it would be such a perfect like plot point in this story. It would just very clearly like illustrate who the good guys and the bad guys are. I was hoping Trump was going to go, but it does to me from just like a writer's standpoint, it doesn't make sense from a storyline standpoint, storyboarding for Trump to go to Moscow and have a moment with Putin before Riyadh. It makes way more sense for that to happen in Riyadh.
Yeah.
For MBS to be there, like facilitating it, brokering it. I'm holding out the expectation. I won't even call it hope because I think it's beyond hope for me that Putin's going to show up in Riyadh, probably unannounced. He's probably just going to show up there. Maybe like the day before. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Riyadh. See ya."
I hope so. I agree with you. That would spoil the surprise a little bit if things were put out of place. So if he showed up to Russia, or if a high level representative from the U.S. showed up to Russia before the joke was set up, the punchline wouldn't make that much sense. So I do hope that composition is in gears. I think that there's good reason to believe it to be so. Yeah. It would
be even cooler if Xi went with him. If Xi and Putin and Trump were all three of them were there, that'd be the sovereign alliance right there. So that would be interesting. And before we pivot away from that part of the world, there's this story. I wrote about this in the Badlands news brief this morning, but I'm sorry, this one. So apparently I think it's the third day this has been going on, but this is Port Sudan. The airport and army base has been struck for 3 days straight. You can see this massive fire here burning. And the Port Sudan is this is annoying how you have to use archive for this. This is where Russia is building that Navy base. Is Port Sudan. And let me just see if there's a few little fast facts here. One drone struck the civilian section of the Port Sudan airport. An airport official told Agence France Press 2 days after the facility's military base was first attacked in drone strikes. The army blamed on the paramilitary rapid support forces. And as I covered on my Geopolitics show a few weeks ago, the rapid support forces, I think, are animated by like the Uniparty, right? Like they are the response to the February 2023 announcement that Sudan and Russia were going to build this Navy base, and the Biden administration had been warning Sudan, you better not do this. You better not agree to do this. They agreed to do it, and then a civil war broke out like 2 months later, April 2023, and so that's been going on for 2 years. And so now this port is being attacked. Well, 2 weeks ago, this is of all outlets, this is the Kiev Independent, right? So this is from April 24th, 2025. U.S. warns serious consequences over Russian naval base plans in Sudan. The U.S. issued a warning that any country or individual involved in Russia's plans to establish a Navy base in Sudan could face serious consequences, including sanctions. A State Department spokesperson told Fox News, of course they told Fox News that, on April 24th. The statement marks a sharp departure from the typically measured tone of recent U.S.-Russia exchanges and signals Washington's concern over Moscow's expanding military footprint in Africa. Expanding. It's the first military base there ever in Africa, the official one at least. We encourage all countries, including Sudan, to avoid any transactions with Russia's defense sector, the spokesperson said. Moving forward with such a facility or any other form of security cooperation with Russia would further isolate Sudan, deepen this current conflict, and risk further regional destabilization. Deepen the current conflict. The current conflict being, are they referring to the Ukraine-Russia war, or are they referring to the Sudanese civil war? I mean, it seems to me like a unwitting confession that they're the ones behind the proxy, our rapid support force or whatever that's trying to overthrow the Sudanese government. Absolutely ridiculous that this stuff's happening. And as I went through on the Geopolitical show a few weeks ago, I showed clips from, or statements from like 2019, 2020, 2021, where the Sudanese government is basically like, yeah, we know that the CIA is trying to like prevent us from having a relationship with Russia, and we know that they are trying to start basically a civil war in our country, which of course happened a few years later. So, you know, this is just, it's more the same. Sergei Lavrov said similar stuff too. Sergei Lavrov was like, yeah, we are aware that the Americans, the Westerners are trying to subvert our diplomacy with, you know, which has nothing to do with them. And it just is more evidence of the fact that the State Department is, in my opinion, the single greatest threat to peace on this, like on this earth. And as long as the State Department continues to exist in its current form, because I do think that we should just create an entirely new agency, fire every single person on the State Department payroll, and force the quote unquote good ones, if there are any, to apply for a job at the new place. And that's how you filter out all the bad people. I don't think you can rehab the State Department, in my opinion. It's just there's too many tumors growing on it, you know? And this is just more proof that no matter what happens, no matter who's president, the State Department is going to try to start wars around the world, which ultimately could lead to World War III, because this is Russia we're going after here. It's not Sudan we're going after, it's Russia. So
yeah, absolutely. No, I think I'm just uploading a little image here I just want to show. I mean, one thing that I think as well that people need to hold in mind really is that what's being disrupted is this danger. The empire, all empires organize themselves around a few core principles. And one of those core principles is divide to conquer. If you can keep your victims, your target, as divided within itself and from its neighbors as possible, they're easier to conquer, to set at each other's throat. So one of the biggest fears is things that actually bring nations into prosperity and into peace by finding points of common interest with their neighbors and with the various interests within each country. That could, when you build a big project, when you have a vision, as they say, where there is no vision, of people perish. Old truism, it's still true today. This is something that the Africa Agenda 2063 report put out back in 2013 or 2014 as their program for what Africa should look like if things aren't sabotaged by arsonists. By 2063, the idea would be to have these major rail lines, some of which would be high speed, according to their reports, that would unify Africa properly as a real union. Like right now, it's actually more expensive because of the lack of infrastructure in Africa. It's cheaper for African citizens from one country to another to fly to Europe first from whatever African country, Congo. It's cheaper to go from Congo to Europe and then to, let's say, Sudan to visit your relatives or friends than it would just be to go from Congo to Sudan. It's imperative that type of infrastructure is lacking, and that consequence is there. Now that's improving. They've got things like the Africa Free Trade Zone, which is moving ahead pretty well. There's an alternative payment mechanism to get around SWIFT, which forces balance settlements of payments around US dollar reserves that everybody has to have. Well, not anymore so much. Within Africa, they can settle different trade imbalances and payments amongst countries in their local currencies through this medium. It's very much enmeshed into the China and the Russian payment systems that are also outside of SWIFT's control that have been built up over the past 5 years. But again, this thing, you could see that one of the key lines, so the most vibrant one, is the northernmost, not the one that's touching the Mediterranean coast, but rather the one going from the port of Djibouti all the way through Ethiopia and onward into Senegal on the left-hand side. And that port of Djibouti is just 28 kilometers away from Yemen, the port of Yemen, right? It's the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So that's a clear thing that people have been looking at strategically as a major flank to completely change the chemistry of the region, but also going out of that from Addis Ababa in north, which is the capital of Ethiopia and the African Union. Its building was built up by China, the Capitol building. It's a member of the BRICS, right? There's been that key north-south green on the right-hand side rail line that would go from Egypt all the way down into the south of South Africa, really, and stretch all the way through Sudan. That would be a really, really amazing project to unify in spirit. Maybe you can keep the South Sudan as its own nation, which, you know, Rhodes scholar Susan Rice was nice enough to organize carving up back in 2009. You might want to keep the two nations. Maybe you could do a healing and reintegrate those nations. You know, there's a Muslim-Christian divide that the imperialists of the West capitalized on to keep the nation at each other's throat and in civil war, as you pointed out. But that's been something that I think has been keeping a lot of these imperialists up sleeplessly, is this potential that if you give people an idea that they're going to have a future, that their kids are going to have a bright future, that there's going to be real job prospects and prosperity, they will be much less inclined to fight people who have a different name for God than they do, right? And that's been part of the secret sauce to keep these wars going. And whether it's here in Africa, which has been played by, you know, the British Empire, the Belgians, the French, using this formula for a long time, or whether it's in India, which we're going to talk about soon, but not yet. It's the same formula. Or Israel, and Jews and Muslims. Just make sure they're not building anything for their kids. Don't permit any large-scale infrastructure that could change the dynamic. Keep the hostility going, and when you have scarcity, it's always easier to get that type of inflamed hostility and resentment so necessary for war. So, what do you got there as an image?
Yeah, so this is that map you were just showed a rail line going to Djibouti, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
And one thing that they've been, so this is Djibouti right here, this really tiny little country across the water from Yemen.
Yeah.
And one thing, so you have this little spit, this thing that spits out the Bab al-Mandab Strait right here.
Yep.
They've been talking about building a bridge here for like 25 years, and it's been subverted purely by Western powers and the State Department ever since.
Yeah.
It was something that MBS actually was trying to get up and running like 5 years ago. He was like, all right, let's go ahead and do this bridge, but we got to make peace with the Houthis first. Like we got to figure out the situation with Yemen before we can do this.
Yeah.
He is 100% hell bent on building this bridge. And, you know, here's the Wikipedia page on it, but, yeah, it's the Gate of Grief, I think is what that stands for. That's what it looks like. Let me see, where is it? It was
actually the Osama, not the Osama, sorry, but the Bin Laden family has a major construction consortium in Saudi Arabia, and they did the feasibility studies for this back in 2004 or something. And here it is. It was moving ahead really, really well right before the Arab Spring, and then the Arab Spring kind of like derailed a lot of it, and then finally the war between Yemen and Saudi Arabia really, really put it to sleep. Oh, that's a beautiful bridge.
Yeah, so here's this is from December 21st, 2024. So this is 5 months ago.
Hmm.
And it says the $125 billion suspension bridge construction that will connect Africa and Asia through the Red Sea. And yeah, so here's the, let me see, is this the one though? Is this Al Noor? Let me see. I got to make sure they're talking about the right place, because this is
It looks like it would have to be that. Asia.
Yeah. Well, no. It says Djibouti and Yemen. Okay, they're
Yeah,
showing a map. They're showing a map here of Sinai. So like, why are you showing
Yeah.
Sinai? It's like this is whoever put this article together. It's like, just so you know, people, this is the wrong part of the Red Sea. You're like way up.
Is it?
You're up here. You're
Yeah.
up. This is what we're looking at in that picture.
That's terrible.
And we're supposed to be like right here. This is where this bridge.
That's embarrassing. Somebody.
Yeah. So I was a little confused. I was like, I got to make sure we're looking at. But yeah, it does say this is the same one I'm thinking of, Djibouti and Yemen. So this is something that in 2020, before COVID, MBS was like hell bent on doing this. But as he said, he's like, we got to make peace with Yemen first, and then they ultimately did, as we just went through. And so this would be major, because this would connect Asia with Africa, the Middle East with Africa, more directly than Egypt. And yeah, it would be a very, very big deal. So obviously it would bring a lot of prosperity to Yemen. It would bring prosperity to the Horn of Africa, Somalia, like those regions. And that's just, there's no way the State Department's going to let that happen.
Yeah. I actually got another image here too, like featured. This is the Schiller Institute put together like all of the different designs that are currently in construction or in planning onto this map, and it's really nice because it just showcases just the sea routes. I mean, again, like 34% of world trade passes through the Red Sea and through the Suez Canal, and so you got that there on the one hand as part of the global, maritime Silk Road, but then you have the images of Saudi Arabia's plans for various rail corridors that are already being built, the Trans-Arabian high-speed rail. That's I don't know what the deadline is, but it's being built. And then you've got the southern routes as well, going through Oman, Yemen, that would clearly connect down through that little gap into Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and the broader Africa. They would have like north connections as well, connecting Sudan with Egypt. It would also like alleviate tensions that have been built up by design around water and the scarcity of water and the issue of the Nile, which, it's causing certain people to get stressed out about the fact that Ethiopia's finished building their Grand Renaissance Dam, a beautiful, beautiful hydroelectric dam, which has just been completed. It's generating electricity, flood controls, you name it. It won't actually cause a disruption or a diminishment of water because it flows north into the Mediterranean, the Nile, right? And so it won't actually cause a diminishment, but there's been a lot of, I guess, gossipy, cynical narratives that have been put out there, which some Egyptians and Sudanese are buying up around the idea that the Ethiopians can then have control over you. They can dominate you because they can control turning off the taps and then force you to, and then kill you all by dehydration. So there's scary discussion that has emerged over the years around threats from LCC circles, people in high-level military officials in Sudan saying that they want to team up to strike to bomb the Ethiopian dam. But again, a lot of this is just coming out of the fact that you've got these people in a state of fear and scarcity, whereas Russia's coming in saying, hey, let's help you build construction. Let's help you build nuclear power so that you can desalinate ocean water, which is what Iran's doing with the nuclear reactors in Egypt's north. They've offered to do the same thing for every African country. And in Sudan, it's a highly advanced conversation to do that. Ethiopia could also have nuclear too, frankly. But if you do that, you create abundance of cheap energy. You get a means to desalinate water to green deserts to provide a lot for the people and industry at the same time. No fear, no need to start getting into threats about, bombing Ethiopia. So it's beautiful in that sense. And again, you could just see why it overthrows the geopolitical chessboard of the great, this game theory model that wants to keep everybody with a knife at their neighbor's throat in fear that, everyone naturally wants to kill their neighbor instead of work together, which is a much more natural thing for humans to do when you don't have, hypnotists and mass psychiatrists and Satanists running around trying to get us to be the worst part of ourselves imaginable.
Yeah, well, I mean, when your diplomatic agencies are all run by violent sociopaths and psychopaths, I mean that they live their life like, doesn't everybody just like visually or metaphorically have a knife at every person's throat around them? Like, isn't that how every human just lives their life day in and day out? Like they think about killing every person that they meet. Like, what's his name said? Mad Dog Mattis. It's like,
right.
It's like, no, dude, actually people don't like fantasize about killing every single person that they know in their life. That's not how like normal people function, but thank you. You mentioned the high-speed rail. They've built, I think it's like 500 kilometers of high-speed rail between Medina and Mecca, which is right here. Jeddah is like the big like beach city in Saudi. I think they've been working on the line between Riyadh and Mecca, if that's not already finished. And then, like you said, there's about 5,000 more kilometers planned for the eastern coast that would connect into the UAE and Oman, but then also the western coast, because the place that they're really trying to develop is this region up here, which has been traversed by humans for 200,000 years. This is Mount Sinai, is right over here. This is like where Moses got the 10 commandments from God. So this is a very, very historic and old region of the world, and yet it's like uninhabited because it is uninhabitable. It's just like all rock. If you go look at let me see if I can probably get it's just all rock. There's nothing there. And so that famous like the line project or whatever that they're building that is like running basically right here, I don't even know if that's a real project. That might just be to like satiate and placate the Malthusians, because they're like they've only built like 2 miles of it, and they're like it's supposed to be 150 miles long. So anyway, I don't. The point of it is to go to from Tabuk to Nome, which is like right around here. Anyway, so the idea is to make this region inhabitable. Do like the French Riviera. That was something that MBS was saying in 2018. He was going to convert the northern Red Sea into like the new French Riviera, which is why when Trump said that about Gaza, I was like, okay, this is not serious, because he's literally just copy and pasting like what MBS just said a few years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that all this is happening, and there's so much to be excited about if you are looking at it from a wholesome worldview, right? I mean, if you're looking at this from a nefarious, like zero sum, in order for one side to win, one side has to lose. We need to kill every single person that we do business with in order to succeed, because you probably come from like a mafia culture and are used to like, mob tactics in order to engage in diplomacy, because you can't do it otherwise because you suck at negotiating. Like that's what the State Department is, basically. State Department can't negotiate to save its ass. And that's why Trump had to send Steve Witkoff in to do their job for them, because they couldn't do it. So Steve Witkoff came in and humiliated everybody at the State Department by basically making peace with all these people who the State Department has told us for years, we can't make peace with these people because they're too unreasonable. And then it turns out Steve Witkoff comes back and says, actually, these people won't even meet face to face with them because they're afraid of them. And Tucker Carlson's like, wait, what? Like they won't meet face? No, they won't meet face to face with them. They won't meet face to face with Putin. They won't meet face to face with Hamas. They won't meet face to face with the Iranians because they're afraid of all these people. They're terrified of them. And so Steve Witkoff and Adam Bowler go and do that and just humiliate these people, these lifelong bureaucrats, diplomats, whatnot, and demonstrate to everybody that the State Department doesn't even need to exist. Our diplomatic mission should look completely different than the way it looks right now.
Yeah, good point. So let's do this before we shift gears to the thing that I'm sure is on a lot of people's minds right now, which is the India-Pakistan conflict. I mean, this could spiral. This could spiral into major war. I did not expect it to come from that zone of all places. So we'll say a few words about that, but let's do a word from today's other sponsor, which I believe might be something I don't even need to read. I think it's a whole ad. Okay, I think it's a produced ad.
Yeah, it's pre-produced. Rise the Tire.
Okay, good. All right, here we go.
By now, you've probably seen the new collab between Rise and Badlands Media, but I'll tell you what you haven't seen yet. The end of Clown World as we know it. But have no fear. Introducing the latest addition to the Badlands INTL lineup. The sequel to the best-selling Sci-War series. We've been conditioned by these clowns to accept their circus. But it's time to unwind that and strike them out the history books. The future belongs to the real, and we've got it in droves. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/rise for the full line of premium and direct-to-garment streetwear. Made to order right here in the good old US of A, the heart of the resistance. The fall of Clown World is upon us, patriots. Let's make it official.
Okay, so as of we talked about this a little bit last week. April 22nd, there was a terrorist incident in Kashmir in the north, small little area that has a lot of people in it, half shared by half of it under the sort of influence of Pakistan, the other half of Kashmir under the influence of India. Mostly Muslim dominated as far as the population. There's a terrorist incident. No proper investigation that I could see was actually done to identify whether the claims made by by India were true, which was that Pakistan's government officially sanctioned this terrorist incident that killed, I think, 22 or 24 people. In that location. They immediately went on hyperdrive, closed down a big chunk of that border. You had the repeal of visas that India basically said to all Pakistani citizens and traveling with tourist visas in India that you got to go home. We don't recognize that anymore. Pakistan retaliated by doing the same thing, and there was a bit of a tit for tat. The line of control that was set up back in 1947 became a very hot, contentious zone. And unfortunately, as of 13, 14 hours ago, as last thing I read, India finally did a very hot-headed thing, which was they launched a number of strikes, not onto military targets of Pakistan, but rather onto what they claim is, and it might be true, I don't know if it's true or not, terrorist infrastructure. Namely at least one, but I think several mosques. The outcome of that appears to have been, according to the Pakistani numbers, 26 dead so far, 46 injured. Quite a few children were killed. I don't think those kids could be. You can't say that these kids were engaged in were a threat to India's national security.
Some neocons might make that argument. We're seeing that the more despicable influencers make the arguments that women and that children have to die because of their tribal ties or whatever. I mean, geographic ties. I mean, it's so silly. But anyway, I digress.
Crazy. It's sick. No, you're right. You're totally right. Part of the dehumanization campaign project. So yeah, you have that going on. Pakistan seems to have retaliated by carrying out a few retaliatory strikes and saying that a much greater escalation is planned. India, we're seeing similar language as well. I think in the Pakistan side, they did target military sites, and mostly I think an Indian jet, maybe two, were shot down by Pakistan. But it's getting hot. These are two nuclear powers, historic brothers, families that were split up by the British imperialists when they carved out Muslim, this new country that they wanted to create out of India once the British left, which was a Muslim, dominated Pakistan, and later on Bangladesh it was formerly known as East Pakistan. That also is the other nation they wanted to carve out of the once whole of India. In order
same year, by the way, they carved up, they created Israel in 1947.
Probably not a coincidence. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. British Mandate Palestine had full control over that carving up agenda. And so, you're playing tribal lines against each other. You know that you've got a formula for constant divide to conquer forever if you can maintain that. And people fell into it. I think 1 million died in the course of extracting people, Muslims and Hindus, and Sikhs from their native homelands. They were much more diffused, living together, working together, fighting the British Empire together for over 150 years. So there was a real common heritage that united them all in a higher identity that went above their particular religious differences. So that was something that the British were always stressed out about. How do we break up these people, these freedom fighters, these anti-imperialists, and what they did in 1947 under Lord Mountbatten, the guy who trained Prince Philip Mountbatten, his uncle, who said, I want to be reincarnated as a deadly virus to solve overpopulation as my greatest, ambition. That father of King Charles III was the guy who was overseeing the carving up. Massive pedophile too. I'll add that. Huge revelations of countless young Indian boys molested by Mountbatten over many years. And so, there was like 1 million dead. The British encouraged knife massacres, kind of like the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda in recent years. Similar things were done back then. And they just worked it and amplified this hate. And now we've got this cauldron of two powers that in the 60s gained control of nuclear weapons. Well, maybe this began. Nuclear energy in both cases, and nuclear weapons soon thereafter. So, where do you see right now this play into the broader dynamic?
It's a good question. So let's kind of take a step back and just look at some of the events that I think led to this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to know how much of this is actually connected, but I think some of this stuff is notable. So we will go first to. I'm just going to share some headlines. We can kind of discuss it as we go. This is 1 month ago, April 8th. Moscow expects India's Modi at Victory Day celebrations. We just talked about Victory Day. A parade this weekend in Moscow to celebrate the Russian victory over the Nazis in World War II. Many world leaders are planning on being there. As of a month ago, Modi is expected to go. We also have, from the day before that, India to launch a base for nuclear subs. So New Delhi is planning a new strategic maritime facility for nuclear submarines and other warships on its southeast coast. And just to show you where that is, it would be Rambili, which is right here. So on the southeast coast, that's where they're going to build this new. And again, I don't know if this is connected. I'm just kind of like, these are kind of the headlines that are sticking out to me as notable. You then have where is it? This one's a little interesting, just given the other things we've talked about. India seeks extradition of wanted diamond tycoon from Belgium. This is April 15th. The Belgian authorities apprehend Mehul Chotsky and confirm his custody on Monday. The Belgian authorities had apprehended Indian fugitive diamond businessman Mehul Chotsky. And if I skip down, I think, what is it? Which part? Where was his mind? Because if he's living in Belgium and he's a diamond tycoon, there's a good chance that he has ties to the Congo, because that was a Belgium colony for a very, very long time. It doesn't say exactly where, but it does say that in November 2023, he obtained residency in Belgium, facilitated by his marriage to a Belgian woman. Prior to his move to Belgium, Chotsky cited medical reasons, specifically chronic lymphocytic leukemia, as grounds for his inability to travel. as evidenced by documents. Anyway, so that is something that I need to look into, because I actually just found that headline. So I need to look into who this guy is, because that is interesting. Because you also have the Gupta brothers from India who were controlling South African politics. They were indicted under or sanctioned under Trump's Executive Order 13818, because they basically had seized control of South Africa's political system through fifth generation warfare. You also have the Israeli diamond tycoons, Dan Gertler and others, who were in the Congo doing the same thing, also sanctioned under Executive Order 13818. I got to see how Chotsky, I guess is how you say his name, how he ties into it. You then have this April 22nd, so a week later. This is 2 days before I think the attack was April 24th, if I'm not mistaken. It was around then. It was Saturday. April 24th was a Thursday, so I think it was around April 24th. India and Saudi Arabia eyed trade deals during Modi visit. So Modi went to Riyadh. They announced a bunch of trade deals. They're going to buy a bunch of what is it? I think it was F-15s. Okay. $100 billion investment in India by MBS and the Saudis. Looks like they're escorted by F-15s, and then refineries related to OPEC. So India's imports of OPEC oil have hit like a record low, it says, in the fiscal year 2024. So Saudi wants to address that. Bilateral trade exceeding $65 billion in 2023-2024. So anyway, that's notable. So you have Modi's making deals with the Sovereign Alliance. And then suddenly you get the attack. And as a result of the attack, Modi is now to miss Moscow Victory Day visit. He's not coming to the Victory Day parade, which it seems to me like what the unipolar hegemony wants to do is they want to isolate India from China, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, who we would call the Sovereign Alliance. India is a pretty important strategic location for a number of reasons. Geographically, I can go back to the map here and show everybody how India is right here next to China, next to Pakistan, near Iran. It's a key node on the north-south transportation corridor, which you have educated us on, which competes with the Red Sea, Suez Canal, Mediterranean Sea trade route, which has long dominated European trade. And then, of course, like back in 2022, there were some skirmishes on the border of China and India where it looked like China and India were going to go to war. There were I remember videos going viral of Chinese soldiers crying on buses being forced to go fight in India, right? Or go reinforce the border. And I remember Steve Bannon was talking about that and talking about India starting World War III over this. So those talking points have been out there for a while that India and China were going to have this war. Now you have India and Pakistan butting heads. Putin is trying to bring the temperature down. Xi is trying to bring the temperature down. Everyone remembers Modi going to Kiev recently, in the past 8 months, and telling Zelensky looking like from a distance he was having a come to Jesus moment with Zelensky, where he's like, "Look, it's over. You need to pack it up. It's over, bro." And then most recently, May 2nd, Modi launches India's first transshipment port. So this is in the very southern coast of India, which is, I'll go back here and show you. This will be India's first major multi-use deep water port. And it says in the article, as of right now, just to give you a sense of where it is, 75% of India's large shipping container traffic has to be handled by the UAE, by Iran, and by I think it said Pakistan, because they don't have a deep water port, so they can't handle the huge ships that come in with the big shipping containers. Most of that has to go elsewhere and then get moved on smaller ships and then come into I think it's their Adani port is what it's called, Adani port. is their biggest port. So this is a really, really big deal. He just commissioned it a week ago. And these are things that don't seem on the surface to be connected, but I see all this stuff as connected because this is the groundwork being laid for the multipolar world, for the shift away from the unipolar hegemony. And ultimately, it undermines the power of the State Department.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to think about it. It's true. I mean, India plays they have so much potential. The growth has been fantastic. They're such a strategic member of both the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as well as the BRICS. There's no agreement. There's this historic hostility that's been inflamed between, as you mentioned, India and China. There's been some outright hot conflict, very, very short in duration, but still very significant, over disputed borders. Much of those borders, when you look at what's behind the dispute, you'll find, again, like as always, British geopolitical assholes who are arbitrarily drawing lines on maps and then getting people who live in these various target countries to go and fight over the random lines that were not even randomly drawn. They were drawn because they would induce conflict. And they never conferred upon China over whether China even agreed on those particular lines that were drawn, resulting in these disputes. But definitely India plays such a potentially positive role in so many things. And you pointed out the Saudi Arabia connection. There's obviously the Iran deals that India plays a key role in the southern branch of the north-south transportation corridor. So does Pakistan, frankly. Pakistan is very, very much connected to Iran on a number of levels. I got this. We talked about this some months back, but this is from Press TV, pointing out in 2023 a 5-year strategic plan for commercial cooperation, but with a military component between Iran and Pakistan. That was a big deal. And, then we had a few months later, a little bit of a hot conflict where there was like actually a danger of some war breaking out. Pakistan launched an attack on a group of what I think are terrorists that share a certain area, Balochistan, I believe, in Iran. And there was like a little bit of a tit for tat. And people started, again, freaking out, losing their heads, saying that this is going to be a new war, potentially a world war between Iran and Pakistan. And then within no time, 5 seconds, big hug, peace. And all of a sudden they initiate these various pipelines between Iran and Pakistan that go ahead and re-solidify this 5-year cooperation agreement. Iran's also a key, just like Pakistan, which you have the Pakistan-China economic corridor, lots of rail, lot of infrastructure being built up with the help of China. Same thing with Iran, big part of the new Silk Road. So super duper important stuff there. And I was noticing that there does seem to be something dangerous within India on both sides, right? So just like in the US, you got Democrats and Republicans. In Canada, you got liberals, conservatives. Same thing for England. All pretty much the same thing. Society can be divided around the idea of left-right dichotomies. It's a game that the empire's been playing since the French Revolution. In India, that manifests in the form of the India Congress Party as sort of the liberal Democrat sort of voice, and it's been like that for a long time, really since it was founded in 1885. And the BJP party, I don't know if I can pronounce it, but I'll try, Bharatiya Janata Party, which are sort of the conservative nationalist response to the left Congress Party. The Congress Party being the party of Jawaharlal Nehru, of Gandhi. And this BJP party, it was set up in 1980, but it was the outgrowth. It had a former name, and it was the Bharatiya Janasangh Party that was sort of the political branch of another Indian entity that was created in 1925. So that dichotomy, both sides have toxic occult Satanists embedded within both sides. just like we have in any country. So it's a controlled game. And I fear that there's something toxic and dangerous within Modi's party. I like Modi. I like a lot of the people. I like his defense minister, his foreign minister. They're cool. I think they're cool, at least. I could be wrong, but I think they're cool. And they're very much reasserting sort of a make India great again, identity. They've restored India's ancient name. India was sort of given to it by the British Empire. They've restored its historic name. And there's a good pride that comes with that. But at the same time, based on their actions with Pakistan now, and this idea of like preparing war with Pakistan, the thing that you pointed out to me before we began today's show is that there's really only one country which has given its support to India's approach. Only one country in the world, which gives us, I think, a bit of a sign about who's on the side of justice here, which is Israel. Israel's the only country that's vocally supported India's response. Everybody else has condemned India's response, saying that this is completely destructive. You don't need to do this. Now, the BJP party, what I'm looking at as far as this toxic danger thing that I sort of see as a parallel to certain operations in Ukraine, as well as in around the Zionist faction in Israel. What do you got there? That's the official voice of Azar.
This is Azar is Israel's ambassador to India.
Okay.
So this is the closest thing you're going to get, I think, to like the official position of the Israeli government, right, towards India. And he says Israel supports India's right for self-defense. Terrorists should know there's no place to hide from their heinous crimes against the innocent. And then there's we don't have to read the article, but there's a Jerusalem Post opinion piece out today that says the unseen bond, India, Israel, and the human cost of extremism. That's an op-ed. So the connections are being laid where it's like the things that are happening with Hamas in Gaza are the same thing that's happening with Pakistan in Kashmir.
Wow. Yeah. It's exactly the same formula. And that's the thing, right? So what we see, there's some creepy parallels. And I'm just going to say a couple things that caught my eye. When I was looking a little bit into the Bharatiya Jana Sangh Party, the former name for the BJP, is that as soon as they were created as a Hindu nationalist movement in 1925, they immediately began advocating for mass segregation of Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs. So they want mass segregation. Obviously, they had a bit of a eugenics orientation as well. They saw themselves as a master race that would lord over the lower races. So they did codify the various races, the various cultures as under a caste kind of logic. There was that caste structure as well, highly embraced. The gurus that tended to become very influential amongst the BJP often. So to this very day, I was a bit struck when I was writing my books on the revenge of the mystery cults that one of the more virulent occult agencies within India are the worshippers of Kali. Kali being sort of the multi-armed goddess of destruction and sexual sort of ecstasy at the same time. So it's sort of a fusion of these very opposite ideas in Kali. She's often carrying around a severed human head. Sometimes she's got 4 arms, sometimes more arms, but always with the severed head, almost always with a bunch of severed arms.
This necklace she has is actually it's a string of severed heads, like pearls, and then her dress is severed arms.
Yeah. And you got that she's usually got this fanatical sort of altered state look in her crazy eyes with her tongue, hanging out, and always with a weapon as well. Yeah, that's the dead guy. That's the dead guy right there. And again, all renditions of her sort of are different variations of the same thing.
The audience will recognize her because I like to make memes where what's her name?
Kamala Harris.
No, Nikki Haley is Kali. I feel like Nikki Haley is the human embodiment, the human person. It's Kali personified.
She's the avatar. She's the avatar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at down under Kali's feet is a dude. Always there's a dude. That's Shiva. Shiva is the sort of counterpart to Shakti. And further down, Shiva's always kind of messed up. Usually, I think that indicates, because there's always a snake wrapped around Shiva in all of these renditions and sculptures and paintings. There's always a snake. Snake venom was a big part of occult ritual. The initiatory rites of transforming one's identity as they go through rites of initiation. Various toxic poisons have been useful to induce a state that would parallel death as part of the death and rebirth, because the old part of you has to die in order to create a new persona for yourself. Some of these techniques were later on advanced by MK Ultra, by the CIA, when they were looking at how do you break down, deconstruct, and then repattern personalities through trauma, shock, and drugs. Things like opiates as well, different psychoactive drugs. Psilocybins have been useful in that process. So anyway, the Kali cult's still very active. I mean, for those who want to, they probably only have heard of this because they watched Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That's the reason why I remember that. And it's traumatic, right? Like,
yeah. Huh? Well, Brett Hour in the chat asked, do people openly worship her in India, or is this like a secret society cult kind of like underground thing?
A bit of both. You can Google it. I mean, I suggest everybody just go to YouTube and just do Kali worship India. Just see some of the videos. There's a public version of it, an exoteric public display of this thing. Some of the worship gets a little bit weird. A lot of sadomasochistic practices. Penetrating the skin with a variety of what looks to me I'm looking at it from an outsider, so if I offend any Hindus listening to this, I'm sorry, but from what it looks to me, it looks like a little bit of a self-flagellation parallel in some ways. But there is another aspect to it that's darker, and people could Google this if they want, is child sacrifice Kali worship in India. Just Google that. And I was surprised to find that every year, in an unbroken continuity, between 50 and 80,000 children are sacrificed to Kali every year. Although this is often ignorant, poor, superstitious village people that are worshipers, there's also very many high up, very influential members of respectable society, so-called, air quotes. Some are very high up gurus who are advisors with political influence, who are also Kali priests. That's also a thing. And, actually, as a quick segue here, in writing my volume 3 of the Revenge of the Mystery Cults, one of the key founders of the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, this guy, Michael Murphy, had spent time on a Kali worshipping ashram in India before he was deployed back into California to set up the Esalen Institute. With this other guy, Kenneth Price, I think is his name, who got, I think, probably ritualistically murdered later on. But this thing became sort of the vanguard behind the creation of the counterculture movement. The entire counterculture was sort of organized by these social engineers who were influenced by these Kali worshippers. Aldous Huxley was another figure who wrote Brave New World and promoted, psychedelic drugs as a new form of a new replacement for Christianity in a new age religion, a new perennial religion of the world, who inspired Michael Murphy as well, was also an admirer of Kali. So you got these weird, high-level, creepy social engineers with a vast amount of influence over the West, who at the same time were tapping into something that's very disgusting. I mean, and again, the Temple of Doom story, if people remember that, does sort of it creates a seemingly fictitious rendition of something that is actually done. So the Kali cult, and if people remember, what do you have? Is Indiana Jones and his love interest, and the little Chinese kid sidekick.
Short round. Yeah.
So they find themselves in this secret society dungeon with a mass sacrifice of human beings going on, who are being lowered into Kalima, right? So this guy's being killed, lowered into the fire, the lava, and a bunch of kids are clearly abducted children who are put to work in a child labor sort of mining operation. So the Kali worship, it was set up. The earliest traces that we find of it in that form was in the late 14th century India, around the same time as the Hashashin cult in the Muslim world was taken down. So actually early 14th century. Around that same time, you have an infusion of Muslims, at least nominally Muslims, into India, around the same time that the Kali cult is created. Now, the Hashashin cult that you and I have talked about is like the assassin order, right? The assassins that were tied to the Nizari Ismailis, a sect of 12 or Shia networks that were working with the Templars, the Gnostic Templars, who were also very big on reconstructing Solomon's temple. Their headquarters was under Solomon's mines in Jerusalem. That was a big part of what the Templars were about. They had a different idea of what that meant, of course. But they would collaborate. These Gnostic Muslims and Gnostic Christian secret societies would collaborate for creating forever conflict, because they have this weird sacred idea that there's a sacred ritual to bloodletting, to war. So it's not war for purely material geopolitical considerations. For these guys, it's like a prayer. It's an excuse for also, it seems like, mass sacrifice as well. So anyway, when the Kali cult shows up now in India, they're really big, and they're known as the Thugis. You know, we've talked about this as well. That's what they became known as, the thugs. So the Thugis were the Kali worshippers who would go and organize in bands to rob and murder everybody that they could, pretty much. And each murder was seen as a worship of Kali, that you're expressing Kali's balance, because Kali demands destruction to necessarily balance out the creation. So they got this weird Manichaean, good evil philosophy that you need to do evil to give the good meaning, right? So in that sense, it's a weird mental gymnastic that these groups do, but it works somehow. And they pass down these traditions, and they say that the British Empire in like the 1830s got rid of them, or at least clamped down on them. I don't think that that's true at all. I think that they legitimized them and brought them into British imperial controls, but they never disappeared. They were always there. In fact, Aurobindo Ghose, who is a very influential figure in the New Age movement in the West, also was a Kali priest. Now, so it seems like most of the virulent Kali worship tends to be around gurus who tend to be affiliated with the BJP, hard segregationist, bigoted nationalists of the right in India, who have congealed around Modi. But Modi, like I said, I think he's a good guy. But you got this other thing inside of the party, right? The other thing that I see parallels with this rebuilding Solomon Temple formula for disaster was in this Lord Ram temple that was just completed. It's this massive it occupies 7.5 acres. It's like a temple to Lord Ram, a Hindu god, ironically, of truth, sacrifice, and ethical governance, that was just completed, just finished. It was like $217 million to build it. Now, the thing about this, why I see it as kind of similar to the Solomon Temple idea, is that just like Solomon's Temple, it's located on the exact zone of a super sacred Hindu mosque that had been razed to the ground in, that's actually a picture of it there. It was razed to the ground in mass riots overseen by members of the BJP back in 1992. About 2,000 people were killed. Mostly Muslims were killed in these riots. And they razed this super sacred temple that had been around for like 500 years to the ground. And on that very site of that sacred Muslim mosque, I should say, on that very ground is where they chose to build this temple, which is a beautiful temple, but it created a lot of animosity now, where you got, it drove a lot of Muslims nuts. Like, this is like, an offense to your soul. It really put a lot of fuel on the fire of resentment and hostility. So you have that going on. You also have something that I'll just show here too. Here's an article on from I forget which website this is. Which site is this? This is International Business Times, which is a useful article, and there's a lot on this. I'm still going to do more work. It's called Hindu Nationalist Historical Links to Nazism and Fascism. That's a picture just, of a typical swastika that we've seen in Ukraine. We saw it on the Havara Agreement too, where the Nazis worked with the British to create the resettlement of Jews into the desert. So you got these ceremonial coins that the Nazis printed with the swastika on one side and the Star of David on the other. And so what they point out is that the BJP party were the most enthusiastic collaborators of Nazism back in World War II. So there's that. I mean, obviously the idea of an Ubermenschen philosophy, an idea of expanding your Lebensraum is a big idea, that we have this heritage, this ancient heritage of superiority that demands more living space, which is what Hitler saw for the Russia was going to be part of the Lebensraum to spread the better genetic stocks into the world and subdue the slave stocks, the slave races. And I'll just say the one last thing, people might hear what I'm saying. They might think, oh, I must be an India Congress Party shill, a left, stooge or something, because I'm saying these things about the right wing in India. I got to say that there are the same things in the left India Congress. The India Congress Party was also created by the British Empire in 1885 by this guy, Alan Octavian Hume, who was a theosophist who had met Madame Helena Blavatsky. He was an initiate of Helena Blavatsky's esoteric section of the Theosophical Society that was working with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Right. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn that people like Aleister Crowley and Bram Stoker and others were all members of. That's what was created in order to, with the esoteric section of the Theosophical Society. And when I say esoteric section, I mean it's the secret teachings, not the public teachings, but the secret teachings that can only be read by the initiates. So this thing was created by this guy who was a British civil servant. He then creates an organ to control the revolutionary anti-British Empire fervor of the Indians in a way that would create, as he wrote to his friend, another civil servant in the 1880s, a pressure valve. You got to absorb. You can't break it. You can't stop it. So you can absorb it and try to control the very predictable freedom response of people who have been abused by the pressures of the empire. And that's what the India Congress Party became. This is what Annie Besant, the heir to Blavatsky when Blavatsky died, her heir, the person who took on control of the Theosophical Society, was Annie Besant, who was another member of the esoteric section, doing tantric black magic. That's part of what they were doing, as part of their Isis revival. They're part of their Kali priestess, because the Kali priesthoods require an outer body experience that could only be done through altered states that involve sex and murder. So you got to merge the sacred and the profane. And so, Isis style, Ishtar style priestesses under sex cults are important because, murder and sex go together. That's what
sacred prostitution. Yeah.
Sacred prostitution. Yeah. And the Christian, you see this. Yeah. This is what Paul was battling in Corinthians in Corinth. So, you got this sort of thing that she then becomes the head of the India Congress Party. She's grooming young disciples who maybe break from some of what she's saying, but people like Gandhi, Gandhi himself. There's all these pictures of him and Annie Besant, and so he's learning how to read Sanskrit. He's learning how to read the Vedas through his interaction with these theosophical circles when he's in London. And this is it's through the theosophical lens that he's interpreting his own religion, which is where I think he's also very much against getting rid of the caste system. A lot of other Hindus were like, yeah, let's get rid of the caste system. Let's move forward into the into the modern world. And Gandhi was like, no. The caste system is very important for our heritage. People have to be, that. And so the Fabian Society, which Annie Besant was also a leader of, the British Fabian Society, the Theosophical Society, which are two aspects of the global British sort of spiritual warfare center of the British Empire. They've got the material, intellectual warfare domains, but they got the spiritual warfare domains that people often overlook, but it's probably the most important one. That's the Theosophical sort of society was created in the 1870s in order to satisfy that aspect of organizing a control grid for humanity to create a new synthetic set of religions. And they would then create the controlled left opposition to the right, more Nazi-oriented groups, both of whom had esoteric occultists on the inside who were willing to sacrifice billions of their own or millions of their own people to achieve goals that had nothing to do with the well-being of India, which is how I think that a lot of this has been played off each other. And I think the same thing can be said for a lot of this in the West as well. So that was just like an observation I had about why I'm concerned that something insidious and toxic has infiltrated the ruling classes through some of these more dishonest gurus who have a lot of influence over many politicians in India, especially in the BJP, who seem to be in alignment with what the worst Zionists and Ukrainian Nazis are also in alignment with, which could sacrifice all of the people living in those regions for some, idea of what they think is the greater good. So that's a concern I got.
Yeah, and a lot of that like sex magic stuff was happening in Ukraine and Eastern Europe around like the time of the Pale of Settlement, which is the ghettos from which Zionism, Bolshevism, and Israel itself all birthed from the Pale of Settlement. So interesting that that those connections, and then just to kind of make a more direct connection from what you were just going through with the like Hindu occult kind of mysticism. This is an article from February 2025, and it says Shivratri 2025, why the world's most advanced particle physics lab has a statue of Lord Shiva. And I'm sure people have seen this picture. This kind of went viral during COVID, I feel like. But it goes on to explain where the Large Hadron Collider, which I believe is in Geneva. It's where the CERN is, right? They have this huge statue of Lord Shiva, and it goes on to explain that the reason they did this is because Shiva communicates or represents that like life is a dance and it's not a static. There's not a stasis to the universe. The universe is like an ever-changing like movement, right? And so that's what Shiva is, and so that's why we use it. But I mean, you see the like the picture of it at night. I mean, look at that. That looks like something from the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
I mean that looks like you have stumbled onto the set of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And it's this is actually where the most advanced particle physics lab in the world is located.
Yeah.
It happens to be in Switzerland.
Yeah. Yeah, just absolutely. Yeah. And Switzerland was also the center of the global black mass or the black mass of Central Europe throughout the Middle Ages. So Switzerland, especially areas like Monte Verita in Ascona, that was a black mass center of occultism and witch covens back in the Middle Ages. I think under the Roman Empire times too, you had the oracles, the Apennine Oracle of the Apennine Sibyl as well, who was stationed in this region. In one of those, no, that was the one in Italy, but there was another one in Switzerland too. But you have these zones that they organize their behavior around, their planning around. The ley lines also in Switzerland, I think, are very, very creepy, that they sort of also take into consideration when they design when they plan out where they're going to build their colliders and things. And they've contaminated a lot of modern science too. So a lot of the teaching of science, if you listen to even like J. Robert Oppenheimer, he was he was a follower of Sanskrit and the Gitas, but he was doing it and I'm not going to say that it's all bad. I've read excerpts that show me like there's deep, good moral philosophical values embedded in a lot of these stories. However, in the same measure, there's an esoteric movement that interprets these stories or amplifies certain elements of stories in order to benefit an occult agenda and promulgate an occult movement that interprets that wants to create a brainwashing of a culture that would then think that when they're dealing with particles or they're dealing with matter and antimatter, which, by the way, both of those things, matter and antimatter, doesn't exist. It's an artificial creation, a mathematical concoction by these ideologues who created this thing when they took over control of standard model cosmology and quantum mechanics under Niels Bohr back in the 1920s and early 30s. That's when sort of quantum mechanics was hijacked by these groups who, like Oppenheimer, believed that they were opening up a portal into some other dimension that could then channel all of these demon spirits and other things that would then be invoked, kind of like a modern sorcerer trick, but now with like the veneer of science sort of backing it up, to do their bidding, to do their Thelemic will or something like that. And there's like even a video, I don't know if it's I think it's real, of what looks to me like a live human sacrifice at that very statue of Kali that was circulating online, where somebody in like a building was just seeing this strange ritual of people in robes, and a girl is like brought into the center of the circle and promptly like murdered right in front of that very statue you have there on the screen.
Yeah, that viral video that went, that was crazy. I remember that video. And
yeah.
And I brought this thing back up just because they mentioned Oppenheimer right here being drawn to the Vedas. It says it may explain why its brightest minds, talking about science, particle physics, such as Oppenheimer, are often drawn to Vedanta, which I think is like plural for the Vedas.
Yeah. And a lot of this was brought in like into the United States, because I mean, how the British did a number, right? The British did a crazy number for the 2 centuries that they were controlling and depopulating India. They were also playing a big role at wiping out India's memory of what it was, destroying libraries, ancient scrolls, and only keeping those parts of Indian scriptures that benefited the control grid of what, the master class of the British Empire wanted to maintain. They cooked up this Aryan invasion theory to inflame the idea to the ruling Brahmin caste, the higher caste, who would need to be the local controllers of India, that you're a separate species. You're a beautiful Aryan species, and then you have the dirty brown people who have to, that's why they're in the lower class, the lower caste. It's just that they're a different species than you. You don't have to treat them with human rights because they're not really human the way you are. So the British were bringing in all of this garbage, of which there was no actual evidence of any like actual Aryan invasion from some better people from the north. That they made up their own thing, and then they started citing themselves in published British journals. That then created this belief that we all have to abide by. That's where lighter skinned Indians come from, as if there is no better alternative theory. But there was. So that the British did all of these things. And then they promoted the idea that, okay, this particular interpretation is going to be the only one we allow. And you had this world, was it the World Parliament of Religions, or the Parliament of World Religions in 1893, which was this big thing that was part of the Chicago Centennial Exhibit, or no, the Chicago World Fair, where they brought in theosophists and Baha'i.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you're right. They did.
And this guy Swami Vivekananda, who was an initiate of a Kali priest.
They brought the Swami, and he lived in Chicago for like a year, like during the parade or during the the fair. Yeah, you're right.
Celebrated as all of the media, the Hearst press, and everybody, all of the media went into a consorted kind of like the British invasion strategy of the 1960s. Like the Beatles are coming, and all of the press creates a hysteria for foolish media consumers to think that this is the best thing in the world. And nobody even knew what the Beatles were. Same thing was done with Swami Vivekananda. I saw no evidence that his speech was all that amazing, but all of the press across America and Europe was like, this was the high point of the conference. He brought in this new way of thinking about the perennial religion, which then influenced Aldous Huxley and everybody. And the person who oversaw that was a dude, Merwin Mary Snell, who was from one of these old families in the United States that came in on the Mayflower. The Snell family is one of the most powerful families. And I write about this in my volume 2 of the Revenge of the Mystery Cults in great detail. And he was the founder of an organization called the Integral Fellowship of the Mahakakra, later on, that is run by Crowley's magical child, Stansfield Jones, a Canadian occultist Lemite, who like runs this thing. It's the secret sauce that sort of ties a lot of the Theosophists as well with the Nazi high command in the 1920s through a bunch of Crowleyites like J.C.R. Fuller, Crowley's lieutenant, who becomes like the second in command under Oswald Mosley. Sir Oswald Mosley, who was running the British Union and fascists and wanted to be the British Hitler, and would have been the Prime Minister of England if Britain had actually had a peace treaty with Hitler, like Hitler wanted. It would have been Oswald Mosley, who was a Theosophist as well as being a hard right nationalist and Crowleyite, with J.C.F. Fuller as his defense minister, who was the back channel between Crowley and Hitler to bring in Thelema into the Nazi high command as the new sort of like core religion. So you got all of this stuff, and that sort of ties together, I think, many different elements of things that we see currently on the game board today that a lot of people just have a difficult time thinking about because they don't have some of the subtleties of this history under their belt. So,
yeah. No, that's all very interesting and well said, and appreciate you diving into that. I guess closing thoughts, and then we can hit the rants. There was this other article that I can't believe I missed this one. I had on my tabs laid up and I didn't go early enough. This one was one that made Ash laugh when I submitted this for the news brief, whatever, over a month ago. This is April 1st. China invites India to a dragon elephant tango. And so Xi was like, hey, we need to get into this dragon elephant dance. That's what he that's like what China's calling it, is the dragon elephant dance. This goes back to what I was saying before about them trying to smooth over ties because it looked like a few years ago they were going to go to war. And then, of course, that was 5 weeks ago. And then this is from yesterday. China calls out CIA provocation. The U.S. spy agency has released recruitment videos targeting Chinese officials. This says Beijing has accused the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, which, I mean, anytime you see the CIA or the State Department, they're interchangeable. So if you see somebody say the State Department, you can just swap it out for the CIA, vice versa for the CIA. Of committing political provocation by releasing recruitment videos in Chinese targeting officials in the country. Speaking at a press conference on Tuesday, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian stated that the U.S. has long been using all kinds of despicable methods to steal other countries' secrets, interfere in their internal affairs, and commit subversion. The diplomat characterized such attempts as being in breach of international law and basic norms governing international relations. The U.S. is not only maliciously smears and attacks China, but also blatantly attempts to allure Chinese personnel, even government officials, to be their informants, Lin said. He further pledged that Beijing would take all measures necessary to resolutely push back infiltration and sabotage activities from overseas and defend national sovereignty, security, and development interests. Says the CIA recruitment videos that were published last Thursday solicit covert cooperation from those in China who possessed, quote, information about economic, fiscal, or trade policies, or work in the defense industry, national security, diplomacy, science, or advanced technology. The spy agency promised to keep its informants' identities protected, offering instructions on how to safely make contact. And this is notable, for obviously, because we were just talking about how nefarious the State Department is. But during Trump's first term, when he went to Riyadh, May 20th, 2017, first foreign trip he took, technically this is going to be his first foreign trip, even though he just went to the Vatican. That was unplanned for the Pope's funeral. This is his first foreign planned trip. During that trip, you'll recall China suddenly arrested and executed a ton of CIA assets, right? Like that was like the big news story, was that China had gotten access to this list of people that had been working with the CIA, and they like rounded them all up and executed them for treason. And I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that was probably like the Trump administration helping out Xi, and letting him know who the who the traitors were in their midst. So I wonder if we're going to see something similar this time during the Riyadh trip, where Trump's going to do the same thing. We'll see. But I didn't view any of that as a coincidence that during that trip, China suddenly announced that they had found dozens of traitors in their government that were working with the CIA.
Yeah. That's very interesting. All right. I love these anomalies. Let's keep this in our evidence basket as we see reality unfold before our eyes and see which hypotheses pan out. But yeah, this is good, man. This is cool.
Yeah, let's hit a few rants.
Any...
Spring Peeper is now a monthly supporter. Welcome aboard, Spring Peeper. Appreciate you. Maga D 1776. Oh, I remember seeing you in Gart. $10. It was great seeing you both. To see you both at Gart, and Matt. A joy to finally meet you in person. Ghost, thanks for helping rep the task force. Yes, of course. Always will rep the Badlandia task force. And then let's just check real quick to see if a shout out to Tattoo Teacher. She had put like a $10 rant in on our Monday night show. Like right when we were closing down, we didn't get a chance to read it. So hold on 1 second. We got that. Okay, so we got a couple of these. So Jay, I think we read those last time because those were the Cult of Saturn questions. Appreciate you, Jay. Yeah. Well, here's something interesting. We literally were just talking about this, and then this is like at the very top of the news feed. Trump to rename Persian Gulf during Saudi Arabia visit, sparking tensions with Iran. So yeah, this definitely feels like misdirection, but hilarious misdirection. So anyway, awesome, man. Well, a couple housekeeping items. So I'll be doing my geopolitics show on Friday, but I will not be here next week. My wife and I are traveling next week, so I won't be streaming at all next week. So Matt will have to either do it solo or maybe bring on a guest for y'all's enjoyment. But I'll be back the following week. So a little bit of FOMO though, because I'm not gonna like be able to stream or anything the week that Trump is in Saudi Arabia, and that's like killing me on the inside. So
painful. Oh
I know. I told Brian that I may like, if something big happens, I may like just record myself into my phone analyzing it and send it to him to like play on Badlands Daily or something. But
yeah, same thing for me too, right? If I'm doing something or when I'm streaming next Wednesday and something has happened 24, 48, 72 hours before and you can't be on anyway, just send me a video of yourself just talking to your phone and I'll play it.
Yeah. Yep. Claire Cat is asking, are you going to Saudi Arabia on Air Force One by chance? I wish I was going to Saudi Arabia. No, we're going to France. First trip we've taken since my daughter was born like 6 years ago. So it's been like 7 years since we've traveled, just the two of us. So
which part of France are you going?
Paris.
Right on. Only Paris, or are you going elsewhere too?
I'm trying to organize a trip to Normandy. So yeah, I think I'm gonna get her to. I think she's game to do it. So I mean, we're kind of playing it by ear. We went during our honeymoon, and so she really wanted to go back, and we did all like the tourist stuff. We hit a lot of the sites that time, and it was much more structured. So this time we're going for like 6 nights. So we're going to be a little more fast and loose this time and kind of play it by ear. But yeah, I mean, we do have things in mind, but I feel like we hit all the major sites the first time. So there's no obligation to do it this time.
Right. Well, that sounds like fun, man.
Yeah, I'd love to get out to the countryside though. The countryside would be great.
Well, I've got a couple of ideas. I'll send you a message about some things to possibly check out. If you go to Bretagne to Normandy, there's some cool ruins as well, ancient ruins that a lot of people miss out on. And anyway, yeah, I'll send you some
me that, yeah, because that'll just give me more ammo to be like, yeah, we're doing Normandy. I can't go all the way over there and not go to Normandy. So
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, says the history buff. All right, so thank you, Gordon. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you all. I'll see you all next week. Gordon, we'll see you sooner. And till next time, bye-bye.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.